The first thing I built inside the workshop is this French Cleat Tool Wall. It's awesome. It stores all of my most frequently used tools, so it's just grab and go. That's been super convenient. As I've been setting up my workshop and organizing everything, I've piled up a bunch of tools that I'd like to add to the wall. Unfortunately, there isn't room on the existing wall, so I'm going to double it and add an entire second set of French cleats to mount tools. On this second area, I can mount the table saw and a large paper roll holder that have recently been added to the French cleat system. I pulled some boxes from storage, so there's plenty of new tools to create holders for. The clamp storage rack here takes up a significant amount of retail space on the wall, so I'm going to build new French cleat holders for the clamps to be integrated on the second French cleat wall. It's time to make the cleats. Now, I already have a template because of the existing cleats on the wall, but this is the first time making something with the new workbench and table saw setup. I started by ripping 4-inch wide strips out of a full sheet of plywood. Then I needed to cut these 8 strips in half with a 45-degree angle. I used a scrap piece to trace a mark from the existing French cleats and set the fence. But another trick would be to guesstimate the fence, cut a small notch on a 4-inch piece, then flip it over and see if it lines up. If it does line up with the cut, then you're golden. If not, then adjust accordingly. I ripped all 8 strips to create 16 full-length French cleats. The cleats are ready, so let's put them on the wall. I'm going to leave a 20-inch gap between the two sections. The new cleats will line up with the old cleats. I know that the plywood walls are level, so I use those as a guide to mark up the wall. The distance between the bottom of one cleat and the bottom of the next is 4 inches. Once the first cleat was on, it was much easier to put on the rest. The gap in between the sections will be used for a few different things. The first is to hang all of my levels and straight edges. Those things can, but shouldn't be hung on a French cleat. If they're mounted here, they'll be close to the workbench and easy to grab while I'm working there. Another reason for the gap is for future dust collection plans. When I do install a dust collection system, I want to have a pipe that swings out over the workbench from the upper wall ceiling area. That swinging pipe could be used a dozen different ways, collecting dust from a multitude of different tools. I think that would be really cool and super functional. This gap between the French cleat sections is where that pipe will swing back in and rest against the wall when not in use. I'm not sure when I'll be able to install a dust collection system because they're expensive, but it's important that I plan it out now so I'm not scrambling later. The last cleat on the bottom will sit an extra 1.5 inches lower. My small table saw is now part of the French cleat system, but it needs a little more room than normal. So mounting the cleat lower allows me to store it here on the wall when it's not being used on the workbench. I also made a large paper roll holder with French cleats. Something I didn't mention earlier is that the spacer at the bottom of the holder is at the exact location to rest in between 2 cleats. Just a small little design detail that you probably never noticed unless I pointed it out. It'll live right here above the table saw. The gap between the sections is now clearly defined, so I added a few things to mount the straight edges and levels. This 8-foot straight edge has a thumb screw, so I just added a block for it to rest in between that and the edge of the French cleats. Everything else is mounted with screws. Now it's time to make holders for everything. I grabbed all the tools and pieces that I wanted to put on the wall and moved them to the workbench. Then I made a list of all the things so I could start grouping them together and design holders. There's a bunch of stuff to assemble, so let's go. First up is the rotary tools. Most of the tools have metal bars that fold out and make it easy to hook onto something. I made a simple holder with an arm that sticks straight out. Then I added hooks underneath for each tool and one on the front for a Dremel extension. I have a bunch of large rolls of electrical wire and other rolls of paper that need to go up on the wall. I connected a few short 2x4s to a cleat, then spaced out the rolls on the 2x4s. I marked the center of the rolls, then drilled holes for the dowels. The holes are drilled so the dowels angle upwards. That way the rolls don't fall off and the dowels don't slide out either. On the last dowel, I utilized it to hold all the handsaws and one plane that I almost never use. I originally made this holder for the router and router bits, but it didn't hold the bits very well, and it wasn't easy to find the bits. I figured I'd make a new holder for all the bits with room for a few more. The top layer with the holes is easily removable, so I can make a new one with more holes if needed. This halogen floodlight will go on the top of the French cleat wall. I just made a simple holder with a half circle groove to hook the light. I just made a simple shelf for this palm sander. At this point, my air compressor was busted, so I was hammering small nails by hand instead of with the nail gun. It made everything take a little bit longer, but it worked out fine. There's already a holder for 2 circular saws. This is a skill saw that can rip through anything. I don't use it as often, but when I do, it gets the job done. This holder has a space punched out for the blade. I have a handful of jigs that I'd like to keep all together. Some of these hardly ever get used. So to make it easy, I just built a cubby to store them all. I added 2 hooks on the side to hold a cabinet handle jig. It's time to transform the clamp rack into French cleat holders. You can divide it into 3 sizes: small, medium, and bar clamps. This is the small. The clamps don't take up a lot of space, so I just made a holder with 2 skinny dowels angled upwards to hold all the small clamps that I have. The medium clamps have much more weight to them. I sized it out, then punched 3 holes in a 2x4 for upward angled dowels. This will hang vertically. I used glue and screws to attach it to the French cleat because of the weight. The last clamp holder to build is for the bar clamps. I cut 2 identical pieces out of 3/4 inch plywood, then sandwiched those pieces around a 2x4. The 2x4 makes it a constant gap to hold the bar clamps, and the top part that contacts the clamps is at a slope downwards to the back. I have a bunch of tarps and sheets of all different sizes, so I'm going to build a large column of cubbies to hold all that. The cubbies will range in size from large to small, so as not to waste any space. My air compressor was now working again. I waited to build this holder because I think it would have been very difficult to build without a nail gun. All this wood is leftover 1/2 inch plywood from the workshop walls. I can't believe I still have large pieces like this to use. The last holder to build is a simple bookshelf. I have some books that I'd like to keep handy for inspiration, research, and for fun. Before I realized that being a stuntman is a real career, I wanted to be an Imagineer. So I have all those books. I have my physics textbooks handy for reference. Of course, I have some baseball books, Go Dodgers, 2020 World Champs, and this will also hold my sketchbooks. These things are full of old plans and future ideas. Now that everything I wanted on the wall is up on the wall, I took some time to clean and rearrange the workshop. My goal was to always have a large project area in the back against the white wall. So this is my opportunity to move things around and make that happen. The Dodger Stadium seats and wood storage carts are on casters, so I can easily make that space bigger if I needed by rolling those things out of the way. After a new holder was built, I just threw it up on the wall wherever there was space. Now that everything is built, I reorganized. A few things that were on the left side shifted to the right side and vice versa. I also moved things around to make some space on the far right side for future holders. The wall looks great, but I'd like to spruce it up a little bit. I'm going to spray paint some of the holders blue, white, and black to bring some character and give the wall a unique look. I decided which holders would be painted which color, then got started. I pulled all of the holders to be painted blue and took them outside to spray. The next group was painted black. Then I painted a few holders white. Since the white could get dirty or scuffed up really easily, I chose to paint only the ones that were more likely to stay clean. One by one, I put the painted cleats back, and this French cleat wall was transforming into one of the best tool organization walls that I've ever seen. Here's a good look at some of the new holders. It's going to make my workflow even more efficient. I've spent too much time in the past looking for tools, and those days are over. Everything has a home, so when I'm cleaning up, everything will go back to where it's supposed to, so it's ready for the next use. This French Cleat edition complements the workshop with all of the organizational things that I've already built. The highly functional workbench, the small parts storage carts, wood storage cart, paint cabinet, spray paint holder, and of course the raised office. I am excited to put this space to good use and build some really fun projects. Okay, that's it for now. See ya. No. Sit. Sit. You're not sitting. Sit. Shoopy, sit. Good boy. It's okay. It's okay. Yes. Bye. Yes. Okay. Wow. Look at this screw I found. It's... Here's what a screw is supposed to look like. And this is... What? That has a super long neck. How does that happen? Oh, come on. Look at this thing. It's so weird. Two feet.